Hello and welcome to Escrow Talks. Today we have with us Harsh Gupta. Harsh is the CRO for Cashfree Payments. He has an illustrious career in almost 10 years, almost in payments. And before that, Harsh has been, in a lot of consultancy roles with ENY, WNS, and all that. Harsh has done his post-graduation from IIM Lucknow. And it's a pleasure having you on board, Harsh, for this conversation. Before anything else, I think I would like to start with your journey of payments and your understanding of the landscape, and then probably we'll deep dive into more further details. Yeah, so over to you.
Great. Thanks, Amit. Thanks for having me. And thanks for the introduction. Right. So I think my journey has been all throughout in technology space. Largely a technology enthusiast. Love to learn more about the latest in technology across domains. Have worked in the technology space from the very beginning. Started my journey as a software developer for a company that worked on mobile communication. Worked on 2G, 2.5G, 3G technologies during the early days of my career. Post that, I moved into consulting, mostly technology and telecom consulting, where I advised multiple organizations across technology implementation. Uh, Finally, post that, moved to fintech during its early years when a lot of us didn't know about UPI payments or even Paytm at that point in time was a very unknown name, right? Fortunately, was really lucky to have seen that growth in the fintech. Has spent the last decade in this industry and seen that growth journey of this industry as well. Uh, have been part of some of the organizations which have become leaders in the space. So for me, I think it's been truly a very, very learning experience in this space.
One thing I need to call out. I think Harsh has been with three big, fintech organizations largely, and which is relevant to our audiences here. I think Harsh has been in thick and thin of PayU when it was on a rapid scale, evolving, and then of course he jumped the bandwagon with Razorpay. I think almost 4.5 years, Harsh,
Yeah,
close to that,
close to 5 years.
and close to
Yeah.
5 years. And then he moved to Cashfree. I think Cashfree recently was in news for a good amount of funding, around 52, 53 million from Crafton. So Harsh, tell me one thing. I think Cashfree has witnessed impressive growth, in the entire competitive payments ecosystem. And with this funding and everything, what is your plan in terms of scaling up the revenues, and how do you keep profitability in check, while doing this? So it's a little tough, for a scaling organizations, but would want to hear your perspective because you have seen this journey enough and
Yeah.
more in your career.
Yeah. Let me try and answer that in a different way, right? A lot of people keep saying that payment has become commoditized. And I feel the way to differentiate in such an industry is to actually ensure you keep innovating, right? Constantly innovate, right? And stay ahead of the curve. Even with new innovation, it's going to give you an edge for a short period of time before the competition catches up, right? So it's very important to keep innovating. At the same time, keep solving for problems which help optimize your clients and your end consumers experience, either in terms of quality of service, support, speed, or relevant product and features that you need to keep building. Then payments, what I largely understand is a portfolio game, and diversification is the key to really manage this entire portfolio, right? Diversification in terms of industries that you cater to, the lines of businesses you cater to, the size of businesses you cater to, not only an individual or a small size business, but also emerging businesses like your D2C startups to an enterprise client like Flipkarts of the world, Make My Trips of the world, etc. And then diversification in terms of your product offerings, right? You can't really depend upon payment gateway as a service or an offering, right? You have to really broaden the horizon, keep diversifying into various offerings. Yeah. You cannot scale and become profitable without catering to different category of clients. That's for sure. And in the end, we fundamentally believe that for success, you have to keep investing in people and technology, build a strong team and build a strong product. I think those will help you scale and sustain profitability.
Perfect. I think one thing which has been doing rounds, Harsh, is regulation and innovation. I think
Yeah.
that's and I've also seen this in a lot of conferences that I have attended with RBI, with a lot of
Yeah.
other regulatory bodies, and I think one thing which has come very very clear from the regulators is that it's zero or it's one. Anything
Yeah.
which is gray has to be avoided for a longer haul. And a lot
Right.
of times, it's very difficult to understand and comprehend while doing a business. But later on, while you progress, you see that there is a lot of metal which goes into the think tank of the regulators, which is way above the curve that you spoke about.
Yeah.
So, given the heightened regulatory focus on fintechs, especially around PAs and cross-border flows, I think how is Cashfree navigating the landscape? And with all this, how do you continue to innovate?
Yeah. So we have always been a proponent of innovation within a regulated framework, right? Being a regulated entity gives you a lot of credibility, of course, shows that the regulator believes in you. They have gone through your processes. They have put in the right checks and balances to ensure you are following all the compliance related processes, right? But it also comes with a lot of responsibility, right? Especially with growing digital transactions, PAs have become an important part of the financial ecosystem, the larger economy, right? And thanks to NPCI and UPI, we have witnessed significant volumes flowing through digital channels, right? When you are processing such a significant portion of this growth, it becomes very, very important to set the right kinds of processes and checks, right? Today, I think we are among the very few companies to hold all the three licenses, whether it's a PA license, PPI license, or a PACB license, right? Which makes us a very comprehensive payments platform, which also reflects on our compliance rigor. We have gone through that entire rigor of setting the right kind of processes, following the guidelines and everything. And in compliance with regulatory guidelines, we have further strengthened our processes right from the point where a merchant onboards, in terms of doing all the kinds of KYC checks, doing customer premise verification, to a point where a merchant does a successful transaction with us, and then settling funds to the merchant in terms of the right bank accounts that we are settling funds to, having regular audits of the escrow accounts, and ensuring that we are following all the processes end to end, right? We have a large dedicated team of risk and compliance, which not only looks at each and every merchant in detail regularly, but also ensures that we follow all the processes set out by the regulator, right? And a regulated industry also comes with its own advantages as well, right? You have more entry barriers, which avoids a lot of non-serious players who do not have long-term commitment to get into this, right? Which also shows that Cashfree as an organization is committed to what we are doing, right? And we are ready to invest into it. So we have invested a lot in last few years into building a very robust risk and compliance framework.
Nice. I think good to hear that, Harsh. So another question which comes to my mind is on embedded finance.
Yeah.
That's something which has become mainstream nowadays. And how are you, especially Cashfree, enabling the platforms and the marketplaces to drive the monetization and build a deeper trust within the ecosystem?
Yeah. So our embedded payment solution allows platforms such as ERPs, CRMs, SaaS providers, marketplaces, billing systems to integrate payment processing directly into their interfaces, right? Uh, and with Cashfree's integration, these platforms do not need to worry about the guidelines, the regulators, the innovations that keep happening in the payment space, right? They get all of these in a single package, and we keep updating those packages often, right? So, for example, native payment experience, right? So these platforms don't really need to worry about all of that, right? Users can make payments without being redirected to external sites, which will reduce friction and enhance larger user experience, right? So they don't have to worry about all of that. Similarly, today there are 180 plus payment options that we support, right? Now these platforms don't need to go to banks and other players to integrate these payment options, right? With a single integration, they can have all of these options on their platform. At the same time, they don't really need to worry about compliance and security because we are there. We are PCI DSS compliant. We follow all the RBI guidelines. So we take care of all those checks, right? We take care of AML screening. We take care of fraud monitoring. So all of that backend heavy lifting is being done by us, which ensures that a lot of these platforms don't have to worry about the backend technology. They can focus more on their core business and core offerings, right? The backend can completely be managed by us, right? And then they can, of course, generate revenue by integrating our payment solution in their offerings, right? Yeah. So I think that's a significant effort saving that happens on the platform's end.
Got it. With a plethora of products that Cashfree has, I think it's very difficult. I mean, to choose one or two, but still, I would want to hear from you that which one or two of the products sees the highest demand, and what is that specific customer challenge that these products are answering?
Yeah. So I think largely payments as a business has scaled already and matured over time, right? Now we are seeing high growth and high demand in new areas of growth. So, for example, risk and fraud management. That's one area. Second is identity validation and management. And the third is cross border payments, right? We are seeing significant growth in these three areas. And our offerings which cater to these areas have also seen significant growth. So, for example, Risk Shield, which is our AI ML based risk real time fraud detection system designed to reduce fraudulent activities for merchants by more than 40%, has seen significant growth and demand, especially among merchants who do not have an in house capability to build a very sophisticated risk management system. Right. Similarly, our identity product, Secure ID, is a comprehensive digital identity verification and fraud prevention platform, which is designed to streamline onboarding, enhance the security significantly for businesses across various sectors. Right, Secure ID specifically has 20 plus verification methods, whether it is Aadhaar validation through multiple ways, OTP, DigiLocker, OCR, PAN validation, driving license, any type of KYC that you talk about. On top of that, bank account validation, UPI, geolocation checks, device fingerprinting, right? All of these is something which is packaged into a single offering, which has seen significant growth in recent times, right? Third, like I talked about, is cross-border payments. Um, I think about 2 years back, the regulator came up with PACB guidelines, right, which have really opened up the market for cross-border payments, specifically import payments, right? We have witnessed significant growth there as well. Uh, in fact, we are among one of the players, or among few of the players who have really pioneered seamless flows in cross-border payments, right? We have seen significant growth. And like I said in the beginning, we are among the few players who have got a PACB license, right? So we have built a full stack on cross border, either for whether it is export payments or import payments, all kinds of flows is something that we have really streamlined. Yeah.
Got it. I think just a, I think substitute question for this. So I think on identity verification bit, I think there are a hell lot of companies who are into this fray. At the same time, on fraud and risk monitoring as well. So how do you ensure that you stay ahead of the curve because there is enough and more competition in the market already.
Yeah.
So what is that? In terms of how do you ensure that you are ahead of the curve in these scenarios?
Yeah. So I think identity, the way we have built it out, is not an isolated offering that we have built out, right? The way we envision identity is we have stitched it together to the payment flows, right? At the core of it, we are a payments company, right? Whatever we do, whatever we build has to be stitched together with payments, right? So today, if I take an example of lending as a segment, right? What we do is when we go out to a lending merchant, right, we give them a complete package solution, right? What that means is starting from user onboarding journey, where they have to do the KYC of a user in terms of validation of the user, account verification. That's where secure ID comes into picture, right? So we start with that. We do that for the merchants. Then to really do the credit dispersal, that's where our payout solution comes into picture. And then recollections or repayments rather is something where the PG comes into play, right? So we have stitched together all these offerings into payments, right? Which gives us a significant advantage over some of the other players who only are offering secure ID or identity verification as an offering, right? So from a positioning standpoint, I think we are very, very uniquely placed in the market.
Understood. I think one thing more, just adding to what you said, I
Yeah.
think as a lender or a big ecosystem player,
Yeah.
whosoever he might be, I think if the end-to-end journey is stitched, I think customers don't mind paying, few pennies extra, and
Absolutely.
that also enhances the stickiness in a lot many ways. So yeah, I think very aptly said. Moving to another one, which is talking about few real world examples of large enterprises or platforms that you've seen in Cashfree that you've been able to scale significantly using the infrastructure that Cashfree has. Could you just name a few where you have helped and they have been able to really scale up nicely?
Sure. So Cashfree is the largest player when it comes to payouts, right?
Yes.
And in fact, the first one to streamline payouts as an offering to merchants. In my opinion, I think taking a few names that we have really helped scale won't be fair. Uh,
Understood.
but I think today most of the leading players across industries such as lending, e-commerce, gaming, etc., use our payout infrastructure for various use cases, ranging from credit dispersal, vendor payments, payroll payments, cashbacks, winnings, refunds, and many more. Right. And today we process more than $40 billion worth of transactions annually for these merchants from a payout standpoint.
Okay, that's a great number, I would say. And being on the other side, both of us, we would have seen a lot of these things. But anyways, I'll move to the next one.
Yeah,
On transaction banking space, this is one space that Castle had 4 years into,
yeah,
and we have seen a good momentum in this ecosystem, which is largely building a domain specific infra.
yeah.
So how do you view the evolution of it's very niche, right? And what advice do you have to offer to players who are aiming to build this space?
So, in my opinion, legacy banks, if I talk about them, they offer very, very broad transaction services when it comes to escrows, virtual accounts, but really lack the kind of customization, the APIs, the turnaround time, the kind of support needed by tech first businesses, right? And startups like Castler, which offer digital escrow, are building their own niche. I think they have created a very, very niche space for themselves, right? Getting narrower and deeper into the solutions that they tailor for specific industries. Some examples being marketplaces, lending platforms, logistics, etc. Right? And APIs and embedded finance in general, I think, are replacing a lot of manual workflows when it comes to dynamic escrow accounts for B2B marketplaces, etc. Right? And if I really think of it, escrow infrastructure is now being reimagined, not just as a compliance necessity, but also more like a trust building measure or a mechanism, right? That really unlocks high value B2B transactions, right? Especially in the sectors like real estate, even cross-border trade, which hasn't really scaled up yet, but I think there is a lot of potential in the cross-border trade. Lending as a key segment, I think there is a lot of opportunity in the lending space. We have seen a lot of use cases in the lending space when it comes to escrow management. And platforms that really make escrows programmable and developer friendly can create a very, very strong hook, right? I feel banks today really fail at the last mile in terms of reconciliation, reporting, ledgers, multi-party flows. And that's where I feel a company like Castler can play a very, very strong role, right? And similarly, other startups who are trying to get into this space, I think that's the place, or those are the problem areas that they can really solve for, right? uh, even dashboards, recon engines, virtual account setups, these are things which I feel can really be solved in a tech first manner.
Thanks, Harsh. I think one thing just I'll add to this is on cross border. I think largely in Latin America or in African countries, a lot of times LCs and BGs are not honored,
Yeah.
and then there is a huge opportunity window that platforms like us can leverage upon once we have that kind of flow. Moving to next one, I think B2B space. You've been in thick and thin of it. I think scaling revenue is a big challenge today because there is enough and more competition. एक दो बिप्स के लिए मारामारी हो रही है and all that, right? So how do you build long-term defensibility, against both? I think the banking ecosystem also and the agile competition as well.
Yeah. Let me try and also add to the problem statement, and probably then I can come to how we are thinking about building a long-term defensibility. Uh, so payments, you rightly said, right? Or payments or larger fintech in general is a very low margin and a highly competitive business, right? Where, and especially this is being seen in Indian market, where Indian client wants best service at the lowest possible price, right? And in some cases, they don't even want to pay, right?
I'm just reminded of, did you see that interview where the Uber CEO was here, Dara?
Yeah,
And he mentioned about one thing that this is a very tough market to crack.
yeah,
The reason being that customer wants everything at paying nothing. So it becomes a Herculean task for business builders. Yeah, please. Yeah,
absolutely,
carry on.
absolutely. But again, Indian market is a high demand market at the same time, right? There is a lot of potential and opportunity as well, right? And as we see, right, and this we have seen in the payments market as well, new players keep coming in, trying to cut down, especially on margins to get a share of the pie, right? And banks also have an inherent pricing advantage because of their CASA plays, right? They work with a lot of businesses, they have their current accounts, employee saving accounts, and basis that they are able to subvent on the payments pricing, etc. So they do hold some inherent pricing advantage. However, at the same time, I believe that digital payments is now more of an infrastructure play, which means in the long run, it will continue to grow with larger digital penetration, right? At the same time, at least we strongly believe that in the long run, only 4 or 5 large players will cease to exist who will be able to sustain high regulatory requirements that are there today, right? The kind of margin pressure there is, uh, and then the need for constant product innovation to stay relevant, right? And we have seen this in the telecom space as well. At
Yes.
some point in time in telecom, there were 11 or 12 players, right? There was a significant infrastructure cost to buy the bandwidth, right? The spectrum, basically, right? And not everybody could sustain that. Today, we have 3 or 4 large players only in telecom, right? I think we are seeing a similar cycle in payments as well, right? Significantly regulated, very high pressure on margins, and a lot of product innovation requirement, right? And of course, all of this requires continuous investments across multiple areas and building a robust platform, which every player cannot do, right? Players who will be able to navigate through these challenges will survive and scale, right? That's my larger take on how this industry will evolve. Now, coming to how we are looking at building a long term defensibility, I think there are multiple plays, right? In my opinion, the players need to grow vertically and horizontally. What I really mean by vertical growth is growing vertically in the entire value chain, both at the back end. So going deep into the back end from acquiring side to the issuing side to ensure higher control on the transaction processing. This also ensures better margins. For example, having a UPI switch for acquiring, UPI issuance through TPAP, direct connectivity with Visa and Master, building acquirer and issuer switch. Similarly, going vertically deep at the front end rather than just helping merchants with payments. Now, payment players are also helping merchants in managing their checkout, right? In terms of optimizing their checkout. So, for example, one-click checkouts have become quite popular, right? Then building no-code solutions, right? Building solutions that help merchants to get more traffic on their platforms, right? I think that's going to be the next wave where payment players are really helping merchants get more traffic to their platform, help them with better conversion, not just payment conversion, but also ensuring that more and more customers buy from their platforms, driving higher cart value,
Yeah.
providing multiple insights on the customer persona, right? So these are going to be non-payment kind of solutions that the players will have to build to go deeper at the front end level as well, right?
Yeah.
Now, coming to horizontal growth, what I really mean by horizontal growth is diversification, again, in terms of product offerings, whether it is PPI, cross border, risk and fraud related solutions, identity related solutions, which means you will have to do more of a cross sell and upsell to improve your margins, create more hooks with the merchants so that they don't move around a lot, right? Your cost of or switchover cost goes high for a merchant, right? They stick around with you more, right? At the same time, the kind of client personas you cater to, like I talked about in the beginning, not just enterprise merchants. I think payment players will also have to look at small size businesses, emerging businesses, and enterprise, of course, right? And then I think the third level of diversification is in terms of channels of distribution, right? We talked about embedded payments. So working with partners like ERP, SaaS, etc. Then larger partner ecosystem, working with banks. I think traditionally banks have been seen as competition to peers. I believe banks are not true competitors. We really need to figure out a way to work very closely with banks. So banks as merchants or clients, as well as somebody who's like a partner for distribution, right? So it's I think both ways, right? So if we are able to achieve both vertical and a horizontal growth, I think that is strong enough defense to remain sustainable and continue to grow, both in terms of revenue and profitability.
That's a great point, Harsh. I must say. With this, I think we are done with the questions that we had around. And now I'll move just one more,
Yeah.
which is more on knowing you. I know you are a very private person, and you don't seldom talk too much till the time there is a point which needs to be made. Having known you for almost 6, 7 years now. Uh, and being a technology enthusiast, that is one thing that you've already told about you. Who is Harsh Gupta? Apart from work, apart from the routine, monotonous job that you've been doing for the last 10 years,
Yeah.
who are you? How do you define yourself?
So I think you sort of rightly said, right? I am probably not somebody who will just go out, catch up with a lot of people, but then at the same time, I have a set of friends whom I go out with quite often, quite regularly. I'm quite open with them, discuss a lot of things with them, and we plan a lot of things. I love travel as well. Uh, you know, during my free time, I typically love to go deeper into technology, like to read a lot about technology, like to hear more about what's happening across the world, right? But yeah, to an extent you are right in the way that I'm a bit of a private person, but I'm quite open with my friends. It takes a little bit of time to build those relationships,
I
but
know.
once those relationships are built, I think I do give my commitment to those.
I have been a witness to that, so I can easily say that. So yeah,
Yeah.
very true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Harsh, for
Thanks.
spending time and talking to us.
Thanks.
As always, it was lovely chatting with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amit. Thank you, folks. Take care.
Thank you.